My name is Trystan. I'm with the Housing Innovation Society and do a range of other random, weird and wacky things in the housing space, some of which you may hear about later today. One of which actually is the How We Live report that some of you may have come across. Everyone has a copy of it on your USB. Encourage you to check it out. So I have the great pleasure now of introducing Jen Deben. So Jen is the lead advisor, policy and engagement with Matapihi, which for those of you who don't know, Matapihi do phenomenal work. They are the peak body for the national Māori community housing sector in Aotearoa, and formed out of one of the national housing conferences, I think in 2010. In 2010, and since have gone on to just become a major force for good in this whole sector. And obviously, a lot of what we're talking about today, and a lot of what Sam and Kenny shared, is in a context that doesn't have the same cultural considerations that we have here in Aotearoa, in a country that is founded on a bicultural agreement. It's founded on a bicultural basis. So there is differences in terms of how we will explore and apply this stuff here. And it's been my pleasure over the last sort of 2 years or so to know Jen and Matapihi and Wayne Knox, the general manager there, and to just have a chance to be involved and support in whatever way has been appropriate. So without further ado, I will hand over to Jen to share her thoughts and reflections.
Right.
Thank
you. Kia ora. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. E tae mai i te CoHoHui, i tēnei wā. Kei te tuku, na mihi nui, na mihi mahana kia koutou katoa. E rere kai mai te awa nui nei, mai i te kahui maunga ki Tangaroa, ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au. Ko rua pehu te maunga, ko whanganui te awa, ko Aotea te waka, ko te ate haunui a paparangi te iwi, he kaimahi o te Matapihi, ko Jen Deben hau, nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Hello everyone, kia ora. My name is Jen Deben and I'm here from Matapihi. Ko wai mātou, who are we? Matapihi is a charitable trust designed to amplify the voice of Māori in the delivery of housing. We are one of the few national Māori bodies, particularly in the area of housing. We arose from a call to action at the inaugural National Māori Housing Conference held in Rotorua in 2010. The name Te Matapihi, he tirohanga mo te iwi, was adopted. Translated, it is a window offering vision for the people. The advantage of having Te Matapihi is that we can build a coordinated industry approach. If we look at the housing ecosystem, it is complex with many moving parts, strategies, potential funders and players. And it seems almost weekly that another announcement is made which contributes to the complexities we all operate under. Te Matapihi navigates these to build connections between the policy levers of government and the desire and capability of Māori. We have noticed a positive shift in the engagement of government, particularly with the establishment of Te Tuapapa Kurakainga, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Before we would learn of new programs and funding opportunities as they came to market. Now the ministry is collaborating with us, our peak body partner, Community Housing Aotearoa, housing providers and Māori. There seems to be genuine momentum to build a joined up approach to impact meaningful change in Aotearoa. Moi moi e. Thriving whānau are at the heart of our vision, and we understand that a thriving home, he kāinga ora, is essential to achieving and maintaining whānau well-being. Mana kāinga is about whānau having the power to choose, influence, and create their home environment. Pumanawa. Our mission emphasises the cultural and spiritual aspect inherent in Māori housing solutions. For us to thrive as Māori, we must be able to connect to our whenua. Being able to connect to the land that sustains us is fundamental to our well-being and sense of belonging as Māori. Our mahi at Te Matapihi is as diverse as the country we live in. To achieve our vision and mission, Te Matapihi collaborates across the sector. Some of the mahi we are involved in includes our partnership with MHUD and Te Puni Kokiri to develop the National Māori Housing Strategy. We are nearing the end of collaborating on the design of the Progressive Home Ownership Fund, and we support in our portfolios across homelessness, community housing, and iwi and papakainga. It is this last part that brings me here today. Papakainga is one form of collective housing that is a centuries-old living example of how we can build communities that thrive. It is a traditional concept that literally translates to layers of homes. Papa meaning layers and kainga meaning home. It brings in aspects of the pa or village lifestyle. This is where whare or houses surrounded the pa and was home for whānau with ancestral connections to the land and people that lived there. Some of these aspects of the pa lifestyle will be familiar to you, as they include dedicated housing spaces, shared gardens, activity, and eating spaces. The community is integrated and reliant on collective contribution. This practice of collective living presents an opportunity for Māori to connect with whānau and whenua and lead sustainable and affordable lifestyles. The concept of papakainga is described well in the report How We Live, which was brought together by Ben Trystan and many esteemed contributors that are here today. How We Live acknowledges papakainga as a valid component of the collective housing model, where it states, papakainga housing models create an opportunity to support iwi and hapu well-being by reconnecting the kainga with whānau, community, land, culture, and history. In modern times, we are utilising remnant Māori land to revision this concept, which you can see in the photos. These photos are examples of the many papakainga managed by Paul Sheeran, a respected housing champion amongst our team and a board member of Te Matapihi. We have had the privilege to visit these sites and we're given the opportunity to learn from him and the whānau leading these projects. These are whānau like you and I, who are determined to overcome the roadblocks and find ways they could still aspire to their dream of a secure, prosperous and healthy future for them and the many generations to follow. Paul found a solution to one of the roadblocks, which I think we can all relate to, the security of finance. Paul was fortunate to connect with a finance advisor that was willing to use a nearby block of freehold land as security. This advisor, also as whānau don't always tick the box, this advisor was willing to look at each case and work through a solution so that whānau could move into these homes. Top of mind for these whānau as the papakainga were built was to maintain intergenerational connection with the land, to pass down to their children so they can pass it down to their children and their children's children. So how do we design a papakainga or intentional community? One method is through cultural mapping. This is a mode of inquiry into historical assessment and exploration of cultural identity. Ensuring site selection is historically sensitive, and the design of the housing responds to core cultural imperatives of customary beliefs such as the orientation towards significant taonga, like the mountain or water. Sustainable development is a key aspect where the design works with the land and involves the selection of appropriate materials and construction systems, and ensures the design of energy and waste management systems has minimal impact on the land that surrounds the homes. Community resource management is a consideration with preference for employment and local economic development opportunities across the Māori value chain. Finally, ensuring quality design and construction promotes well-being and improves health outcomes for the mind, the body, and the soul. In December, our team visited a living example of this at Pohara Papakainga. In the photo above, you can see the waste management system. You can see the waste management system. What is interesting about this bespoke system is that it was designed with cultural imperatives in mind, such as the byproduct must be cleaned before any of it touches the land, and absolutely none of it can ever reach the river that flows nearby. It was designed to be environmentally sustainable with common gardens and orchard and common water use, a truly inspiring papakainga to have visited. A supporter of cultural mapping is Minister Henare, who was recently quoted, "What I really enjoy about the way Māori do their planning for their houses or their village is they actually culturally map the area to make sure of what they want to see in their community. They want to see kura kaupapa. They want to see kohanga reo, and all those things that will give their whānau and their tamariki the opportunity to do really well. Furthermore, he states that Māori are starting to revolutionise housing design in Aotearoa. Thank you, CoHoHui, for the invitation to be here today, and also to my fellow, to a board member of Te Matapihi, Ali, who is also here to support me. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Actually got a copy for those of you who haven't seen. Robin Allison, who is here, who authored Co-Housing for Life. I've got a copy of that for you, Jen. This is a thank you. It's right here. Cool. So I'm sure as many of you can see and appreciate in terms of the, I'm just going to turn the mic up a little. Probably don't need it for me because I'm Irish, but there's so much that's shared, and in terms of the welcome that we received this morning generously from Te Atiawa, Taranaki Whanui and Pakaira, we're developing and living on land that by and large has already been pre-developed and has had people that have come before us and have a responsibility to engage with that. But as well as the responsibility, there's a huge opportunity by virtue of the fact that we are all facing the same challenges. We are all facing the same barriers to finance. We're facing the same design issues, the same regulatory environment that makes it challenging for us to support our families, our communities living the way that we and they want to live. So there's a big opportunity for us to put what might be sometimes uncomfortable in connecting more deeply to ourselves and bringing that to the table so that we can all move forward better together. So next up, I'm going to hand over to my colleague at the Housing Innovation Society and dear friend, Greer O'Donnell, to give us a little bit of insight into the history of this weird thing called the Housing Innovation Society.
I'm not Irish, but probably don't need that either. So, kia ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Greer O'Donnell takuingoa, ko whanganui aho. So I grew up in Whanganui, and I have been lucky enough to connect with all of the people that have been involved in the Housing Innovation Society over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. A little bit of admin for those who are wondering, it did used to be called the Society for Alternative Housing Development, but we decided we needed a bit more of a positive spin on things. So it got a bit of a rebrand, same kind of mahi, but with the objective of trying to support innovation in housing development to address issues of equality, affordability and sustainability. So as we heard about in this morning's keynote, there's a range of different ways that can be done. And in Aotearoa, we have traditionally had a housing continuum which is very much centred on the public housing support and the private market response, which has left this gaping kind of hole in the middle where many people could actually be served and therefore alleviate pressure on the bottom end of the spectrum if there were more options in the middle. So we've had some assisted ownership and assisted rental that have been bubbling to the surface over the last few years. And what we're hoping to do at the Housing Innovation Society is add a few more. So we won't go into the ins and outs of the kind of technical elements behind each of these. There are people across Aotearoa and working around the motu who are exploring each different types, and you're going to hear about some of them soon. And I encourage you, if you are interested in understanding some of the mechanics, come and find us during the break and have a chat to us about those, because they really do offer a potential to provide not only greater sustainability within housing and social connection, but affordable housing that stays affordable despite the fact that it might be sold on to a second occupier or the next resident, but it retains its affordability. And I think that is the most fundamental thing that we can do if we are to crack this sort of housing crisis in a long-term focused way. So as about the organisation, we have come together over the last year as a sort of interim committee, because we're really aware that we want to be representative of all the people in Aotearoa, and at the moment we're not as representative as we could be. So it was really important to us to come up with principles that would guide our work and hopefully will set the foundations for the future committees to build upon. We're at the beginning of a journey, so we really want people to get on the waka with us. There will be an upcoming AGM, which you will all be notified of, and we really do encourage you, no matter where you are in Aotearoa, no matter what your background, no matter if you don't have the things that you think are the relevant experience or skills, we really encourage you to come forward, because we really, really, really want this to be representative. The core areas that we focus on is around education. So as you heard from this morning's keynote, there's a lot of knowledge building that needs to go on, capability and capacity building across the residents that want to participate, but also the professional sectors. You'll go to a lot of lawyers in Aotearoa and they'll advise you against this because it's not common, it's not known. The tax situation is uncommon. So it's hard at every step, and traditional architects, bless you all. And so, we've got to educate everybody. Don't even get me started on the politicians and the ministers, but we're working on it. And then we advocate on behalf of what is a growing sector. So we can't represent your voice, and be truly representative unless you give us the right to do that. And so participating in our AGM and signing up and being active is hugely important to us. And then connection is bringing us together in hui like this, but in small hui around the country as well. There's many one that Ben and I have participated in, and we encourage that if there's something you want to do in your community, but you need a bit of help, or you might need a bit of technical expertise, to reach out to us, and we'll help you to deliver what you need for your communities. So we won't impart upon you what we think, we'll just be the backbone to support. So that's about all I wanted to say, but I do encourage you to come and chat with any of the committee members and put your hand up next time we call for committee members, because we really need you guys to help us move this large, ever-changing waka forward. Thank you. So I'm going to now hand over to Imogen, which is here.
Morena all. It's been my fabulous honour to be able to introduce you to an array of projects that have come to different stages along their journey. And in trying to undertake this task, it's been obviously quite tricky because there are a number of projects and we have a very short, tight time frame for the program today to allow them to be presented. So I wanted to acknowledge an array of projects and just briefly High Street in Dunedin, they're busy moving in. Co-house in Greer, welcome to those that from there here. Closer in Karikari, they're forming a development company and it's still trying to find land. Wanga Kau in Flaxmere, Maori development on iwi-owned land, and a raising rainbow of all the types of housing they're seeking to make happen there, which is really fascinating and awesome. Cornerstone Housing that did secure land from government and unfortunately haven't found a development partner for in Auckland. They were going to be over 55, so that's that project. And Buckley Avenue in Wellington, a great homegrown project, and they're currently mid-build and they're about to put their roofs on in a couple of weeks' time. So awesome that there is so much rich work happening, and we've also got a great lineup of some people to present, obviously right here now with us. In the process of trying to choose projects for you today, we've looked at different types of tenures, different stages through the cycle, and obviously when we don't succeed, there's lots of rich learnings that's worth sharing as well. The format for today, you'll notice that there is consistency across the presenters. We've tried to keep it tight, but also consistent in what we've asked them to present to you. And unfortunately, because it's so tight, we haven't got time for questions, but we do encourage you to seek out the presenters over the lunch break for any individual questions that you might have. So firstly, I wish to welcome up Helmut. He's from the Ngāti Community Land Trust. He's an experienced chief executive, director, businessman and consultant with specialist skills in the business and economic development space, including new venture planning and establishment. So a very ambitious program. In 2020, Helmet led Ngāti Tawa to become the largest Māori community housing provider in the country. This year, Ngāti Tawa has initiated a bold program of land reacquisition and housing development that will see hundreds of houses built on iwi-owned land. Please join me in welcoming Helmet.
Good to go. Point it. Cool. Kia ora tātou. I'm actually the CEO of Te Runanga o Tō Rangatira. G'day, mate. And there actually is no such thing as a Ngāti Tō Community Land Trust, but I'll explain that little deception in just a minute. So good to be with you. There isn't a possible, with the possible exception of saving Papa Tuanuku and the degradation that we've foisted on her. This is probably the second most important kaupapa in our land. So good on you for being interested and going hard on it. So what you have on the board in front of us today, whānau, is Ngāti Tō's aspiration. Short version is that we're focused on the progression of enhancing the well-being in its widest sense, the prosperity in its widest sense, and the mana of Ngāti Toa and of the people who live on our whenua, of which you are included. And our strategy for pursuing that aspiration is a simple one. Rangatiratanga mana motu hake is words that we use. Rowing our own waka is another version of it, which essentially makes the same point. Our journey, though, has begun with us putting some effort into trying to frame up out of our creative minds, out of our fertile imaginations, a sense of what the future might look like at some point in the future. What you're looking at is a very quick fly through of Takapuaia, which is the centre of the universe, in case you didn't know. This is the Porirua Harbour here. This is Whitireia Polytech. This is Takapuaia on the right. Everything in white is existing built environment, and everything that's coloured is an early version of our thinking around what we might build and change as we move forward. On the left, as you enter into Takapuaia, this is a purpose-built health and social service building. On the right was a community. This one here is a community building. There's Whitireia. These are kaumātua residences for the future. The long version of this rendering is 12 minutes long, so we had to do a quick snapshot, and this is an early one, which is why you're getting a fast version. The marae is here, it's invisible, but these are kaumātua flats, as I say, which we aspire to add to our housing stock in Takapuaia here. We love to play basketball in Takapuaia here, and so we are dreaming big dreams here. This is Mana College. If you ever go out to Takapuaia Titahi Bay, this is the hockey field there. And we're swinging back over in towards the park. As I say, everything that's white or faded is existing built environment. This is all new. In the middle of the park and just to the side of our marae are 2 blocks where some initial thinking on what we'd put on there that is basically residential kaumātua residences with an aged care facility so that we might age at home. Our more recent thinking is far more intensively thinking about what those lands might be used for. As we head up the hill, these lands were in the process of getting back from Kainga Order. They were taken under the Public Works Act in 1951 for roads that were never built and houses that were never built. And we're shortly to get it back after 70 years. Kia ora for that. And these are just some early creative concepts. We'll plan to develop them so that the built environment will be not overwhelm the natural environment, and we'll use some of the best, cleverest people like Ben and others to think of how we can do that sustainably with energy and waste and water and all the rest of that in play. The last thing we'll do, this is up Popo Tururu, which is a valley up the end of Takapuaia that also will be part of the development, and then we'll end the rendering just ends up at the top, where we want to create a new living marae for our people up high. So everyone that goes down State Highway number 1 and looks across the harbour knows who the hell lives there. So that's a quick run through. And I guess the point I just wanted to make, not bad view, eh? I told you it's the center of the universe. So reason that I wanted to start there was because, you know, both because of crystallizing of your thinking, I've got to keep watch lights. So crystallizing of your thinking and also the power to communicate and to unify those who are stakeholders. My experience has been a lot in change and community change, and it's really a key for success is the ability to communicate, engage, and unify those who have an interest, a stake in a journey, and engaging and crystallizing a vision for where you're going is a powerful and recommended thing to do. First message. Second message is lift where you stand. So our strategy, as I said, was rowing our own waka, and so we're standing up progressively a series of vertically integrated businesses or endeavours which we're either going to be owned entirely by us or in partnership with others. And first off the rank, unsurprisingly, is a wholesale building supply company to enable us to access what we need. A second company that's in train, again in partnership with Ben and some very clever people, thank you for that, is the we secured the rights to a mature North American prefabricated technology, which with the support of some local talented men and women, we're localizing both into its design as compliance with our standards and the localization of materials as well. And the dot points, well, they're not dot pointed, are they? The items up on the board there, really on the slide, is just giving you some idea of the characteristics of that, which is a pretty impressive list, right? And I think the first panels were just built on Saturday, and we got the bigs up that we're getting really excited about being able to deliver on this. Other businesses in the chain, there's a Tour Architects, that's a partnership arrangement, and we're looking at other businesses so that we can control both the direct and indirect benefits of rowing that waka and achieving what we're trying to do in this space. A light is gone. Good. The last thing I wanted to end with is, so we actually are in the process of reacquiring our whenua in and around our kāinga. So Takapua here is home base, 40, 50 hectares that we're in the process of getting back. We've reached agreement with Radio New Zealand around Titahi Bay for the reacquisition of 50 hectares around at Whitireia. We've got a similar size of reacquisition occurring in other parts of Porirua. And then up Porirua East, which is primarily a low socioeconomic community, for those who know, we've actually decided that the land we're acquiring up there, we're going to make available for the Pacific community, primarily up there, to create a Pacific 21st century kind of villagey thing for them that they'll get to design, they'll get to own. It'll be on Ngāti tour land. And the model we operate is we don't sell land. So it always, all the land that we have and are acquiring will go into a trust. I actually, got to wrap it up. So the issue is by taking the land out of the equation, right, and putting a low, so we charge a 2% per annum. So it's just like paying your rates. So immediately strip out 40% of the cost. EFODs know all this stuff. Anyway, it's about making it available at a much more affordable cost. And with us also controlling the supply delivery model, right, then we get the actual improvement cost shrinking right down, and that then becomes a very cheery story. And that's all I've got to say. Kia ora.
Thanks, Helmut. And I'll now pass on to the Cambridge Co-housing group. We've got Rosie and John.
Sorry. How does this work? Kia ora, ko John Pitcairn, ko Rosie Cahalane tēnei. We are from Cambridge Co-housing, Cambridge Waikato. And let me get my slides going. We don't need that one. So I'll give you a quick overview and structure. We've been established as a group for around 2 years. The whole thing was the vision of a Cambridge family, Brad and Vicky White. Brad, I'm a little surprised to be standing up here in front of you all right now. However, Air New Zealand wonderfully refused to fly Brad in this morning due to bad weather or something. So you get me.
She really surprised you now, John Cahalane.
Does that mean you're Rosie Pitcairn? Didn't think so. So the whole thing got started up 2 years ago. Brad and Vicky thought this would be a terrific idea, put out the call amongst some family and friends to begin with, and then to the wider community, which is how we found them. We currently have 11 signed up, paid up households, and another 4 or 5 maybe waiting in the wings who we need to get onboarded. With ages from 5 to 70 something, we're really aiming to try and be as multi-generational as we can, because Cambridge is quite well known as a retirement community. So we don't all want to be in our 70s in 10 years' time. Our current structure is we're an incorporated society, keeps everybody sort of on the level. We're looking at building 20 to 30 dwellings. These will range from 1 to 4 bedrooms. The 1 bedroom end will be around 50 square meters. 4 bedrooms, if we do them, around 110, maybe 115. The sweet spot for us seems to be, judging from the community, the 2 to 3 bedroom mark. Most of us are sort of clustering around there. We're likely to be looking at a unit title structure with some kind of body corporate arrangement for shared facilities, shared land. This may change, but at the moment the thinking there is, well, that's something that it's easy for banks to lend on. They understand this, they know how to go ahead with this. And we are looking at being well under market price, which, if you've seen the market prices in Cambridge lately, maybe that's not going to be quite so hard to do. Oh, yeah, they're all going there to retire. Yeah. Things we wish we knew. Man, this collective housing stuff's weird, isn't it? We're all a bunch of hippies. It's going to be a commune. It's just council and developers see it as so alternative, and they can't wrap their heads around the fact that, firstly, that the community wants to drive it, that it's not the case that they're going to build it and we're going to come. And secondly, that we don't want to make a profit out of it. And it's just too weird for them. They're all wrapped up in 50, 60 years of their current development pipeline, and it's hard for them to think outside of that. How am I doing with time? I'm still pretty good. Our biggest success is that in 2 years, we've built a pretty cohesive community, quite supportive of each other. And that has led us to actually getting an MOU with a very supportive and sympathetic landowner, which we got by the old-fashioned method of a mail drop around the area. One of our members got out on their bike and delivered sort of 100 odd leaflets to rural lifestyle landowners. So we have this MOU, and the MOU will allow us to spend 6 months working with the landowners, there's 2 of them, to figure out how we might subdivide their 3 hectares of land so that they get to do what they want, and we get to build a co-housing community on maybe around a hectare of land. Whether it's a hectare or a bit more or a bit less is going to depend a bit on what council thinks about the zoning laws and the density that we can do. Our biggest challenges: we need to rely on external funding. We can't fund this ourselves. We probably have within the group the ability to buy the land, but we certainly don't have the ability to fund an entire development. So we're going to be going and looking for external funding, and it's probably going to be a range of funders that we're going to need. We've missed out on land. We've missed out twice so far. First time we were just getting started, and we really didn't have our eye on the ball, and something that we had our eye on just got sold. We didn't know. Second time, we had to scramble really fast to try and get an offer in on some land. We managed to actually pull together some funding from within the community to do that. Got our offer in and got outbid by quite a substantial amount by a developer, who then proceeded to try and sell it back to us a couple of months later at a profit. No. Our biggest challenge at the moment, some of you may know this, is there's a neighbouring residential development going in place who've applied for a subdivision consent, and strangely, all of the council roading and infrastructure that was on their land has now disappeared in that subdivision consent. And guess where that's going to go? Yeah, right next door on ours. So we've been presenting to an RMA hearing, which has been interesting. We might know the result in 5 or 6 weeks, and then we'll see what happens. Our key advice: discuss finance early with your members. Don't get into the idea that it's somehow magically going to happen. You need to have the financial discussions early. If we'd have been a bit earlier and talked about it, we'd have discovered that we actually have enough funding in the group to maybe buy land. Establish a lead team as soon as you can, once you have the trust of your community, and their job is to just to keep things moving and to have some ability to make a few decisions and spend a little bit of money that doesn't need to go back for consensus all the time. And keep all your options on the table. Go and talk to council, go and talk to your development partners, go and talk to everybody, talk to them often, talk to them early. I'll leave you with this: Naku te roro, nau te roro, ka ora te iwi. With your basket and my basket, the people will thrive. Thank you.
Wow, so common themes of creativity and innovation coming through strongly. Next, I'd like to welcome up Peterborough Housing Cooperative and our speaker, Trystan.
Kia ora koutou, ko Trystan Takawingwa no Ōtautahi Hau, kei Peterborough Housing Cooperative taku kāinga. We bought 5 properties in 1982 for $92,000. So our community group bought them in an auction, took a weekend to go around and borrow $5,000 off each person to pay for them. So yeah, knocked down the fences and spent the next decades maintaining them until the earthquake happened and they bit the dust. But that's allowed us to build a purpose-built project for community, so designed for community using the co-housing principles. They really work. So got 14 townhouses around a common courtyard, put the cars on the side, only have a couple of entrances, so I can't sneak into my house, have to go through the main entrance, past the common house, talk to my neighbours on the way, have to sit in their porches or wave or have them come in for a cup of tea. It gets us a long time to do things. Yeah, so got grandparents, couples, singles, 9 children. There's a real good sense of whanaungatanga. Have a common house, so like a wharenui, like our sort of second house. So it's got a little second lounge. It's our weekly meal. Have a loft upstairs, have a shared laundry room for the kids, and makes it bigger than just me. It gives me a good sort of sense of belonging. So we're a cooperative, which means that we're owned and managed by the residents or workers or community. We did have to form a body corporate for the rebuild, and we've had 3 people who have bought in. the body corporate rules are the residents' rules. So the residents set the community rules and body corporate follows that. The buyers have no capital gain in their investment. 11 of the households are owned by our charitable trust, and we as residents pay rent to the trust. We also elect the trustees, so the trustees are ourselves plus 2 outsiders to keep us honest, and charge a living rent. So a 2-bedroom place will go for $320 a week. And so, yeah, we're our own landlords. Biggest success is smarter children. Your children will be smarter if they're brought up in a village. So because they get to talk to other people than just their parents. So these kids have moved on now. So Tan in the Blue has just released his latest signal on Spotify. So you can download Tan PK, and it's called Natural Ecstasy. Grace is now at med school. So I wish I knew more about project management. It's hard, it's extremely hard on relationships. And yeah, goodness, so made a lot of mistakes. So here's one. So our architect made us these very beautiful buildings, and check out that slope on the laundry going diagonally across. And but he didn't really integrate the solar boosted hot water system for our underground underfloor heating, and so the heat pumps are sitting on this big ugly white box in the front. So this is all just new, so we haven't landscaped yet. And yeah, goodness, so if I was going to do something differently again, I'd go for a design build company. So key advice is, so our houses were valued at 440,000 at the beginning. Now they're worth about 8 million. So it shows how hard it is to do the same thing now, and also how much the baby boomers profiteering from the housing market has screwed it up for the next generation and doing projects like these. So capital gains tax or whatever we can do to support this crazy market would be great. And so our trust gives advice for new groups setting up. Come and visit. We've got a guest room, stay, have a chat. We tour people through the cooperative very often, and I think 300 in the last month. So yeah, do come visit. Be nice to see you. Kia ora koutou.
Thanks, Trystan. The land theme comes across quite strongly, doesn't it, in terms of the catalyst to get something off the ground and started. Next up, we've got Ian McComb from Brookside, Featherston, and I'll let you introduce yourself if that's okay. Keeping the time.
Cool. All right. Right, CoHoHui. Hello. I've got an introduction here. Brookside's about affordable housing, preferably in community. So that's really what we're about. So our image there shows the snapshot of what we're looking at. The smaller houses, clusters of them, with food growing and a nice natural environment is where sort of started the image. We had to add the children because too many people thought because we had community facilities in there, we had to be a retirement village. So the whole, co-housing understanding is pretty low in New Zealand. So I've got background building civil and environmental engineering, did a decade as an self-employed consultant. The first thing started with, there was a community housing cooperative in '92. I was the founding chairman of a group. We bought 180 hectares in rural New South Wales. We started developing a community there, grew to over 100 members in total, but eventually failed because of lack of finance and lack of effective decision-making structures in the cooperative. So that was a torturous learning experience, but I've kept learning for the last 30 years on all this sort of stuff. I spent a decade in local government as well. So local government development engineer. So that's setting the conditions on developers as to what they will build and then inspecting to make sure they're built properly, and infrastructure planning to design the growth of cities. So I've done that in a few towns in New Zealand. And so taking all that knowledge, but being frustrated with the outcomes that were being delivered by government. And I could see it wasn't working for the environment or for people, just cookie cutter suburbs going out there and no real provision for smaller housing. I set up small time developments in 2016 as social enterprise to pursue affordable community housing, particularly at the small end. So 1 and 2 bedroom places as a key element of how we achieve affordability. It's also the mainstream market is just not building enough 1 and 2 bedroom places. So there's nowhere for young people to go. There's nowhere for old people to downsize. When we have enough 1s and 2s, there'll be plenty of 3s and above because everyone will downsize into them. So in 2018, I found 4 hectares out at Featherston, flat, serviced, zoned residential, all look good. So I formed a new company, Brookside, to develop that. Initially proposed 120 small and tiny homes in 4 co-housing clusters. Council rejected that application. So they were opposed to tiny lots. It was the official information and not enough information. So I relented on that and I scaled back to 30 dwellings as a first stage, still being resisted by council. So that's not happening yet. So I'm pursuing complying development because I have to keep moving rather than just sit around and fight council forever. So the complying development's under construction. It's happening now. The Brookside project structure, privately held company, small leadership team. That's how we do it. The community will be unit titled with a community association, but limited resident duties and expectations. So I'm really bringing people in with affordability, having an onboarding process to educate them that they're moving into a community, but not doing the traditional forming the group with the intention of co-housing. It's more looking at a model that can be reproduced for mainstream. So getting people into affordable housing, introducing them to community. It's sort of a light community sort of version where it's facilitated rather than mandated, because affordable owner-occupied dwellings is the main thing that I'm targeting. In sustainable pocket neighbourhoods, community design, permaculture principles. So the community cooperative that I started 30 years ago was all about a permaculture farm, craft facilities, eco-village type thinking. So that's carried through all of my subsequent work. Okay, so here's a layout of stage 1. Where's the laser? Oops, no. Top one. Now we go back. So we need to go page up. No, page down. Right, which one's the laser? Top one. Right. Okay, so central car park, community shed. So rather than having garages, a series of workshops in here, solar cells on the roof, bike shed on one side, every one car park per house. These have all been designed now to be fully accessible with ramps up, because that was, in Featherston, there's a lot of people who want to stay in town, but there's nowhere to move to. There's no aged care facility. There's no smaller house they can move to. So that was certainly the feedback got from the community. Community house, once again, solar cells on the roof. Large kitchen, large dining, guest room, community laundry, So, you know, the 1-bedroom places don't need to have even the laundry, and the community doesn't need the extra rooms for the occasional guest. So 30 houses, council wanted me to select all the houses. So I've chosen 4 companies, select all the houses, mainly 1 and 2 bedroom, a few 3 bedrooms and 1 4-bedroom. And they wanted to know every single detail of solar access and privacy and setbacks and urban design overkill. And so that's why it's all fully designed. And so no opportunity for self-build here. Pocket parks here, so these residents will sort of have that layout. They've got some private gardens, then the pocket parks, and then the larger community spaces. In this image, it shows the public park there, but it's actually going to be over here now. There's a couple of 1,000 metres of public reserve there and playground. And then, yeah, 30 houses as one stage. So that one's still on hold as I chat with council. So the one thing, yes, I wish I knew that we're going to so rigidly fight for the district plan rules. So the objectives and policies of the district plan talk about innovation, they talk about a range of housing sizes and et cetera, but no, 400 square metres minimum is the rule. And so that's still a future debate. So that's my failure. 2 years of delay, cost increases of 25%. I was looking at single story prefab. I could have had the whole thing built in a year, I believe. But yeah, it's year 3 and I've almost got some titles. Almost, yes. So the success, I've run out of time. Okay, success is cheap land, house and land packages. So that's what I've achieved. You can read the numbers. That house is on site. So that's 35 square metre house, which won't, of course, be funded by a bank. It's below their threshold. And pick the council before the land. Find the supportive councils. And as someone else mentioned, keep your decision-making lean and get enough dollars so you can actually move forward.
A very strong theme there of adaptability and sometimes a bit of compromise to get things across the line, it would seem. Thanks so much, Ian. And our next speaker is Bronwen from the Urban Habitat Collective, who's also a member of this committee as well. And I'll let Bronwen introduce herself too in the interest of keeping to time.
Technology works. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Bronwen Newton hau. I am one of the co-founders of the Urban Habitat Collective. I'm also the project navigator. One of my other co-founders is sitting up the back there, Jessie Matthews. My qualifications for this job are that I am a small-time property developer, lawyer, place centre mother. So what that means is that I'm not scared of the contracts. It means that I know how to negotiate particularly well with people, with mothers of preschoolers, and basically nothing that goes on in commercial is anything compared to the very motivated. Urban Habitat Collective is a group of 48 wonderful people. Here they are. We have 9 children in the group and probably about a dozen pets. We're building New Zealand's first co-housing apartment building in Adelaide Road. We'll be 25 apartments across 2 buildings with a shared garden and common room, roof deck and workshop and bike storage. Our project started almost 3.5 years ago, as many things do in Wellington, over a cup of coffee. Jessie and I were talking about how we couldn't get apartments that we wanted to live in, and we realised that actually if we wanted them, we were going to have to build them ourselves. Interestingly, it took us probably 6 months before we started to call it co-housing. We thought we were doing something new and innovative, and it wasn't until we started looking overseas to California, to Germany and to Denmark that we realised that actually co-housing is a thing in the rest of the world. And much and all as, you know, we Kiwis like to think that we're really innovative, this is one area where we are rather slow to catch up. As the other speakers have said, one of the big hurdles for any kind of collective housing project is procuring land. it's a paradox where if you don't have a group, then you are unable to buy some land, but it's very hard to get land if you don't have a group. So we were really fortunate that we had a few keen souls on board, and this property, pretty much every tradesperson or boatie in Wellington knew about Kia Ora sheet metal. They did a lot of flashings and a lot of sheet metal work. And probably half of Wellington had said to Brian at some point or another, you know, when you're going to retire, just come and talk to us and we'll do a deal about the property. Now, my brother was one of those people. And so when we were looking for land, I went and talked to Brian, and he and Penny, their families have owned the property for 3 generations. And he liked what our concept was. And so they agreed to negotiate with us without going to the market, which was really kind of them. Unfortunately, they then went to their big law firm who said, oh no, we've got other clients that will pay you much more. So the price got jacked up by about 250K. But they still did come back to us and let us buy the land. So yeah, if you can somehow manage to negotiate with the landowner when you don't have to compete with developers who have deep pockets, that is going to be all to the good for your project. So we've been working on the project for 3.5 years, but it still only looks like this. However, we do have a resource consent. We have a fantastic set of drawings, and we're in the final stages of negotiating a build contract. And this is what it will look like when it is finished. Yes. We're a not-for-profit project. No one's making a developer margin out of our project. But the flip side of this is that the cavalry's not coming as far as price. So people have had to sign up to our project, and they have to take responsibility for the fact that while we're working completely transparently, and obviously we're all working incredibly hard to get the to keep the price down, there is no upper limit, which means that it's a real act of faith on the part of our members to to be involved in the project. There it is. Okay. And this is the layout of the ground floor. As you see, the shared areas, the shared common room here, garden apartment, and the workshop. This is the 5 parks for the car share, patio. So we structure our workload into work circles. We have a momentum team, which is the leadership team, but it's very open. If anybody can come to momentum team meetings if they want to. And then we've got these 4 areas: comms and recruitment, community, finance and legal, and design and build. And it's very fluid. People can attend as many meetings as they like. What we find is that we're always trying to balance momentum with inclusion, right? Like, participant fatigue is a real thing. So in an ideal world, if we had total energy and total time, we'd include all the people all of the time in every decision right from the beginning. But that's not how it is. And so what we need to do is we devolve the work to the various circles, and we put forward proposals so that when a proposal is refined enough, it goes to the group for decision. We do consensus decision making, which does mean a lot of talking. We're incredibly blessed in our group. We have very self-expressed people. People are very clear with their views, but they are also really committed to the momentum of the group, which means that we will have some very intense conversations. But usually in the end, we end up with either all agreement, or we end up with, I agree, but I have some reservations, but I won't block consensus. So that's been a very interesting journey. We make great use of the coloured cards that Earthsong developed, and we find that it really helps with managing our process. So I totally recommend those. What we wish we'd known. There are lots of things. But I think the key thing is that you have to start out optimistic, but then you have to get pessimistic really fast. But then you have to stay optimistic. However, nobody can tell you how much stuff costs, and you actually don't know. You don't know what you want, and you don't know how much it's going to cost. So be optimistic, but be prepared for disappointment. So our biggest success would have to be the team. Here they are here. Fantastic group of people. They're incredibly courageous, incredibly engaged. I loved hearing in the keynote presentation, the architect saying, people are in a difficult situation and no one panics and everyone holds their nerve. Well, that's our group. So we are, we're at the really hard end of value engineering and negotiating, and we have everybody still in the boat. So I'm just so proud of them, and it's a real honor to work with them, and it just makes all the work worthwhile. In fact, I got a random text from one of our lovely group members this morning just saying thank you for all the work you do to create our homes. We really appreciate you. So, so fantastic. I guess one of the other things I want to observe just in terms of successes is that we're really clear that we're just a housing project. Like there are other projects that are involved in permaculture and for Māori housing, for cultural kind of renaissance, those kind of things. Our project is about co-housing. And what we've been clear about is that means that we need to agree on the things that make us good neighbours. We need to agree on the stuff that is going to enable us to live in a building together. And actually, we don't need to agree on the rest. We don't need to agree on politics, on parenting, on a whole lot of things. And by doing that, we have created space for diversity and tolerance. So, okay. So, I'll be quick. Our greatest failure is believing in estimates. So we had a situation, we had a price from a QS, we had it confirmed by our preferred contractor, and then when the tender price came back, it was 23.5% higher. I went too. So even if you want it to be true, keep asking questions because possibly it's not. And my advice to groups is definitely so many platitudes that I could give you. I guess without doing that, I'll just say it really is about the people. The theory of living in co-housing with just some random bunch of people is really, it's interesting, right? But it's actually not that satisfying. But once the people are real, actually, you really do want to do co-housing with these people. So I really encourage you to do that. Kia ora.
Thank you, Bronwen. Lots of great lessons there. And while we're speaking about lessons, Camia is going to share with us her recent journey, and we appreciate you coming, given how Rosie still up, Camia.
Where am I pointing? Here. Okay. Kia ora, ko Camia toko ingoa. Who in here knows about Collets Corner? Okay, who in here doesn't know about Collets Corner? Okay, wow, surprising. So and I didn't know, so I didn't put a whole lot in about Collets Corner. I'm gonna just tell you some fatal news. The project, we announced it's wrapping up. I really didn't want to do this. It's wrapping up, and we just announced it. And I put my whole heart in. The reason I really want to be here, and this will pass. I get nervous on every talk, and I'm totally used to it. And I'm also really quite emotional because it's just quite big. The reason I really wanted to share what happened is so that you guys can learn, and so you don't go through what we've gone through because it's so incredibly painful. And really, this entire sector needs all of us behind it, not just a few of us. So what I want to share with you are the lessons, and that's all I'm focusing on. And the entire project and the entire history of the project and everything about it is on the website. So I would encourage you to actually look at it because I think there's a lot of merit and there's a lot that we can all learn from it. My tears will pass and apologies. So I'm focusing on only the lessons here. First off, with the community, I'm gonna go. Where am I pointing? Thank you. To build a community, I started out with the project with looking at trying to build a community by building a building. Now, the community that you develop the project with may not be the community that you serve in the end, and that's okay. You just need to understand that there's some design, let's say, principles to overcome when you know that your community that you're serving isn't the same as the one that you're developing it with. So I would encourage people to not get committed to designing and building the project with the community that it's ultimately serving. I think that's okay. We can separate those two. For Collets Corner, the project isn't about housing. We have a housing component, but the entire project was about creating a center of well-being. And that came from 2 years of consulting with the local Lyttelton community. And from that, we were able to drive what the project was. We hosted a competition. This was an absolute fail. I'm sorry for the architects that participated in that. Ultimately, what we learned from that is the competition itself was a great idea to get interest and participation, and I think do a democratic process around what gets built in our towns and cities. The unfortunate part about it is that we put a winning design and selected it, but it was about 3 times the budget and didn't meet the code. So we had to do a massive redesign, and we broke the trust with the local community through doing that. So I would highly recommend a competition, but make sure whatever you put out to a local community, you can actually develop and so you can actually pursue. So after going through the value engineering and getting it down into budget, we had the building that was in the top. And then we went to council. And like everybody has mentioned, the council are wonderful people, and their job is to uphold policy, and policy is sitting in like 2 centuries in the past. So unfortunately, we went through a massive redesign. Building costs went up, and we had to divide the building into 4 separate buildings to be in keeping with local Lyttelton area. And we still have the top 2 floors are all housing, and then the ground floor and the basement, and because it's living and has light, is all the well-being center. And housing is based on co-living principles. That doesn't fit into council framework. Like they don't get what to do with it. And so anything to do with community just doesn't fit. They don't know where to put it. They don't know what box to take. So they focus on the things you don't have. We spent 18 months and $220,000 to get permission from them. The lesson learned here, don't go to council thinking they're your friends. I know they're super nice people. Go to council with a lawyer and go to council with a planner, and they should communicate on your behalf because it is a policy that you're going through. It's not a friendly communication, and you just have to treat it that way. I'm sorry, but that's actually the truth. I'm putting this one in for Imogen. This is all about the equity crowdfunding. Collets Corner was the first equity crowdfunded commercial development. The idea was we were building communities by building buildings, and we were doing that together. I'm making property development accessible. The one lesson I learned here, and there's an entire course on this, so please take it if you're thinking about it, and it's a really good one that Pledge Me runs. The one lesson I learned here is don't try to raise too much money too soon, because your community you need to build in stages, and so you want to raise what you need in stages. Now, what we tried to do is raise $2 million in our first and what was going to be our only equity crowdfunding. We didn't reach that, and that brought a lot of disappointment into the project, which then turns into doubt. So what you want to do is create milestones that are within an easy reach, because that creates successful moments, and successful moments builds energy in a project. So really critical and really good lesson to learn on this one. Core team is me for 5 years or more, with one person that worked about 4 hours a week. That is a fail. I mean, to say the least. It's too much for one person. This is so hard. Risk needs to be divided. It should not be on one person. And whoever's going into this, you've got to know that that should be shared. There's no way that you should put that all on one person. It's not kind. And there are a lot of people that get a lot of rewards and take absolutely no risk. And I'm looking to the banks, and I'm looking to the council, and I'm actually looking to the Lyttelton community who put a lot of expectations of this project and contributed very little. And I have a lot of resentment and a lot of blame in that area that I need to move through. But for future projects, highly recommend understanding a strategy around mitigating risk distribution and balancing risk. Doesn't want to go again. Thank you. Maybe the battery might be out. Banks. So this is why the project fell over. We had bank financing secured before the pandemic. Post-pandemic, we did not have bank financing. The current context and the current lending climate has fundamentally shifted. So before the pandemic, we were in a post-earthquake context. That means development was tapering off. And we were actually the poster child of impact investment meets property development. Everybody wanted us to come in and take a loan from them because it was a great, let's say, merger between those two. Post-pandemic, they've got really low interest rates and the government is backing a huge amount of projects. So there's a lot of developers coming in to take loans. We just moved to the bottom of the pile and we can no longer secure a loan. So that's the end of the project. Thank you.
Thanks, Camia, for your courageous leadership. It won't be lost. And there's many lessons learned. Thank you again. Next up, we've got Jules and Blair from 26 Aroha, a fantastic development that's in Auckland, which they can tell us more about shortly.
Just want to acknowledge Camia and like Featherston, who share failures, because we all learn from those.
Yeah.
It's really courageous and really Kia ora everyone, I'm Blair. This is my much better half, Jules.
He's a charmer.
We've just built 13 apartments in Auckland with a bit of a difference, so we're here to share that with you. So 5 years ago, we set this vision on the left, and it still holds true for us. Create hubs of people that can live in a sustainable, affordable, and friendly way with a minimum impact on the planet. And we tagged that with, we wanted to be a positive influence in the neighbourhood. We had 3 other things. Firstly, and you'll hear the history from Jules, but we wanted to make this available to people who can't afford to buy a house, even a collectively designed and built house. So we have targeted this at renters. We also wanted to make this work on a single site because we feel there's a hurdle in terms of land acquisition, buying multiple sites. And we have 2 boys. We wanted to do something that they felt was a good thing to hand over to them and contribute towards solving some of the problems that we've created for their generation.
Right, this is my mother and I. We celebrate, I say that with that tone. She was a very shrewd businesswoman. She's the 3rd generation of providing rental accommodation to people. Her life started here at Vivian Street in Wellington, but I'm going to go over time if I keep going on about her. Anyway, I was her only child and she was tenacious. She owned 13 rental properties in Auckland, so land wasn't an issue for us. We sold all those properties and borrowed that same amount again off the bank to fund this development. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, anyway, blah, blah. So 2021, we had the site that she also owned. It had a 1 bungalow and only housed 4 people. It was a drafty derelict bungalow. As I said, we got the money together from the rentals and the bank, and now we're housing 25 people. So that to us is a success. And over the 20 years, we will save about 400,000 for our Aroha residents on their power, their water and their internet. The reason for that is we have a single use. Now I've gone off script and I'm going to lose my way, beg your pardon. Our power supply company is Ecotricity. They're also carbon neutral. We've got 1 internet provider and that's Voyager. So all their utility rates are greatly reduced instead of everybody individually going out and getting who they want to do it. We've reduced the day-to-day water consumption because we've all got low flow plumbing hardware, and we've saved on water consumption over the 20 years, and Blair's done all the calculations. He's a spreadsheet guy. You need a spreadsheet guy. You need a property manager.
That's all I'm good at.
No. But we are definitely a team. It's been tremendously stressful. We live right next door. We've been there the whole way through. And our landfill contribution will only be 36 tonnes, and that's due to the ability to support all our residents with low waste living. So right from the onset, we were designing the apartments with that in mind. All the organic food waste goes back into the gardens that are on site, and this one here is what I call the doll's house. So the key things on this is the we've got the solar hot water, and that provides probably 60% of the hot water use for the apartments. We've got a common roof area. We've borrowed this off the Commons in Melbourne from Breathe Architecture. So that becomes a space where people go up to and bump into each other. So it's not a kind of a, and we've got the PV panels. We've also got the superior building insulation that goes around the outside. This is a Northern Hemisphere practice. So we don't get the thermal bridging between the floors and the walls, so that the places are very warm and easy to heat. They've kind of got between 18 and 22 degrees heating, and I will sit down and I'll back off.
We also have, look, we've stolen a lot of these ideas from, we've been to those places over in Europe. As Jules mentioned, we've been and looked at the Commons. Some of you might have heard of that place, part of the Nightingale group in Melbourne, and places here, you know, Earth Song, Guest House. That's a commonly done thing, but you know, we really have stolen ideas and built on them as much as we can. Very common theme around the council. We wish we knew it would take 18 months to get resource consent, which it did, and that's a almost fully compliant design. And part of it was our fault. We did lodge the consent before that Auckland's new density rules were in place, the unitary plan, which was, so we were definitely on the bleeding edge. But we did have some neighbours that really didn't like the idea of a 5-storey apartment block going up next to their 2-storey bungalow, which you can kind of understand.
Litigation.
So that all got, council got very nervous and we got dragged through a notification process. We really feel proud that from the start we've designed in ways for people to live to save money on utilities. You saw the numbers. So yeah, really encourage people to think about how you design and power, water, internet, all those services right in at the start, because it saves a lot of money over the years and it's always there. If you don't put it in at the start, you can't do it. Actually, of course, our real success, we have 30 really fantastic people living there now and have since the end of last year. We did, renting's a bit different. We, when you, on an ownership model, you tend to involve people much earlier in the cycle. When you build something to rent, we discovered people make decisions about renting when they want to rent. And so we thought, okay, how do we find these people? And so we followed traditional approaches and went out to Trade Me and so on. It just didn't work because people just filter on price, how many bedrooms. They're very apartment focused, whereas what we have and what you guys are designing is far more than that. So we kind of went through a few months of getting nowhere and eventually tapped into social media and started tagging interest groups. And
with the help of our kids, I hasten to add.
we did need our children, yeah, Instagram. And then we also insisted when people go and see rentals, they tend to go and get booked in 15-minute slots. We also said that's not going to work for us. So we booked people in for a minimum of an hour, walked them around, talked to them, got to know them, they got to know us. So it's showing that there's far more than an apartment involved in living at 26 Aroha. The shared space is a really common theme and obviously one of the keys to success of sort of more community living. And we reckon we've done pretty well with the roof space. We've got the shared gardens down the back. Probably next, we just want to lift it to another level when we do this again, and so that's probably something we would try and not necessarily do differently, but just try and improve every time. And we see lots of energy going into that for the way you guys are designing. This is our team. Common theme, get yourself a really good team. We feel blessed. We had a fantastic team. You need designers who understand what you're trying to achieve. And we reckon we must have done pretty well because our 2 designers are here in the room. In fact, one of them lives at 26 Aroha. Pretty cool. But fantastic builders, and it's really important to have a team that works together, spend time on getting the right team. And you know, as I said, we haven't talked enough to all the others in this room, if we're really honest. Talk to everyone, copy, share. There were lots of invitations from people to come and have a look at their place. We extend the same invitation. come and have a look at Aroha, learn from us, do it better. We spent 2 years doing this. The first year was intentional. The second year was waiting for resource consent. It was a benefit. So yeah, share. It's really hard. Probably 2 or 3 times we really wondered if we were going to succeed, but it's just been extremely rewarding. So hang in there.
There we are.
Thank you.
So common themes, not surprising at all. There's a lot of passion in the room. There's a lot of passion from our presenters. And there's also obviously deep, deep commitment that comes through for all of our presenters as well. And I also want to acknowledge the personal sacrifice that we've witnessed in front today. And also, I suppose, end a little bit on Bronwen's quote that we've referred to earlier in the day about it shouldn't be this hard. And with those in mind, I want to take you into the next, well, after lunch, we'll be moving into a space and place of a workshop style where these kind of things can be fleshed out in a little bit more detail. So in relation to lunch, obviously, we'll be going out to the space that we're in before. Before we get into the next session, please congregate near the screen that's moving its part of the exhibition space for the next session. And thank you again for all the amazing speakers and presenters.